Sorry, Nadia.
I'm relaxed. So I'm Nadia Clancy. I became the Minister for Small and Family Business at the end of March after the March election. And this week is Small Business Week, as I'm sure you all know. This is fantastic to be at another event for it. And it's really good to have a week solely focused on small businesses. Obviously, I'm thinking about them and all of you are thinking about it every single day. But also like after BISA week as well, a couple of weeks ago, it's really nice to run into this week too. And this morning I was at an event for women in business, and it was awesome to have a room full of about 300 women talking about their businesses and how we can support one another. When we got elected back in 2022, we established the Office for Small and Family Business and also created, so I'm getting really distracted by you, Cam. Hello, my name's Nadia, big fan. And established a small business strategy as well. And so we've got a number of programs designed to support small businesses through that. And we also announced in the most recent budget we've asked the Productivity Commission to do a review of red tape, which is something that small businesses and family businesses raise a lot. So I just want to encourage everybody to please engage in that process. Organisations like the AHA have already put one in, even though they hadn't been asked to yet, so they're very keen. So I presume they'll be doing a couple more, but please do talk to your peak bodies and do engage with one another, and please put in some practical examples, because so often people will just say red tape and business operators are so busy that then they aren't able to give me clear examples. So please give me detailed examples, or give the Commission detailed examples, because we really, really do want to make practical changes that make it easier to do business. I'm not going to take any more time because I genuinely just wanted to come and listen. I'm a bit nervous because it's being recorded and I shouldn't pick favourites, but I definitely spend the most amount of money in the hospitality industry. So I want to thank you all for your work. Thank you for making Adelaide and South Australia such a dynamic, beautiful place and an exciting place to bring people as well. I have a huge list of restaurants and cafes that I send my interstate friends when they're coming in. So thank you for everything you do. Please look forward to hearing from you, but please do reach out if we can ever help with anything. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Nadia.
Thank you, Nadia. I'm going to very quickly introduce our panellists. We have Chantal Hart.
Hi.
Who is the director and editor of the Adelaide Dining magazine, with more than 15 years experience across journalism, media and communications. We have Oliver Brown, who is the managing director of the Big Easy Group and has more than 15 years experience creating and operating some of South Australia's best known hospitality venues, including Antry Bandit. We have Chloe Matthews, who is the marketing director of Piermont, the family-owned hospitality group behind 8 venues, or 9, I think. Coming soon. The Sterling, Marriottville, Belair and Seaton hotels. And we have Anna Muller, this CEO of the Australian Hotels Association South Australia, and she brings an extensive experience across law, industry, advocacy and government relations. And thank you very much for joining us tonight. Hey. So tonight we want to move beyond general observations and talk honestly about what is happening inside the hospitality industry, what is generating genuine profit, what customers are responding to and what needs to change to help venues remain viable. I'll direct each question to one panellist initially, but I encourage the other panellists to add a brief comment where they have a different perspective or relevant experience to share. Yep. We have 30 minutes and plenty to cover, so I may occasionally move us along to make sure we hear from everyone. After the panel, we'll move into an open facilitated discussion involving the broader room with an opportunity to ask questions and respond to the panel or share what isn't or is working. So I'm going to start off with Ollie. Let's begin with profitability. What initiatives have you introduced that have created genuine profit, not just increased foot traffic or made the venue look busy? And if you want to do a slightly bigger introduction about yourself, you're more than welcome to as well.
Thanks.
All right, thank you. Oliver Brown, Big Easy Group. So we've got a number of venues around Adelaide. I think we've got sort of in the Big Easy Group banner, I think it's about eight different brands that we run under. And profitability is a great question, because I remember in 2023 we had sort of like six venues. We were doing great revenue, and from the outside looking in, it looked like we were pumping. We were so popular, and everyone would have been like, it's a great business, but it was a shit business. It was like it just wasn't making any money. I remember looking at the P&L, like consolidated after the financial year, and it's like we lost like $700,000 or something. And I was like, how can we lose that much money when we're so busy and like our brand is really strong and people loved it and reviews were great, and it was just we were missing those kind of fundamental key elements that can actually make hospitality profitable. So since then, we've really been kind of like dialing in and fine tuning and trying to improve our business model to actually run not great venues, but also great businesses. So that's what we've been doing the last kind of 3 years. And the transformation has been like out of control. So we've kind of gone from negative, I think, through a 4% to like positive 13% EBITDA, like group wide, over 50% more revenue or something like that. So it's been a huge improvement. And I guess if we were to break it down into like really like fundamental steps, or what we did is we fixed the foundations for one. So we couldn't really track anything. We kind of had ideas, or we'd look at P&Ls at the end of the month and we would try and see if we're making money, but we couldn't really track it. Or if you asked me on any given day, I wouldn't really be able to cite or quote any of the numbers. But now I could probably cite every number from every venue every week, I think. We spent a lot of time building in the systems and foundations, and then we focused on more people more often, spending more money. So those kind of like key 3 levers, which is the idea that if you get more people coming in and they come back more often, and when they do, they spend more money, you get this like insane compounding effect. And I was actually chatting to Andrew quickly before, we were talking about the perspective of marketing and marketing spend. We used to look at marketing spend as cost to acquire a customer against the average ticket of that customer's single visit. So let's say it was a $60 per head. Then I don't know, I feel like I'm just directing it all straight at you. I should be talking to everyone else. Yeah. So we would say it was $20 to acquire that customer, which is probably what like a digital ad or meta would be, something like that, $20. Yeah, $60 spent per head. Cost of goods and labor is going to be somewhere like 70%, and then we're going to spend 33% on acquiring that customer. So we're negative 3% on that single visit. But then what we weren't taking into account is once they were in, we don't need to spend that $20 again to have them return and repeat. So the lever, you can spend more acquisition to get people in the door as long as they're repeating. So then we changed our measurement to figure out what that lifetime customer value per annum was. And what it does is you start looking at, say they come 3 times a year, you start looking at $180 against $20. And now that customer acquisition cost feels a lot more attainable, a lot more reasonable. And the first thing that allows you to do is scale marketing spend, because you know, actually they are profitable if they're repeating. So you can scale your marketing spend. You can actually buy more people to come in, which is great because you can outbid the competitors who aren't looking at it in the same way. The second lever is you can actually have them come 4 times. So that $180 gets to, my math's going to be bad, $240. So you get $240 from that single customer. So your customer acquisition cost gets a lifetime customer value, like drop significantly again. So if you look at more people coming more often, the third lever there is when they come, they spend $65 instead of $60. So you start to get this huge kind of extrapolation of results once you start kind of compounding them through. And then obviously you want to pull back the cost of delivery of whatever that product is wherever you can as well. So I feel like I've really gone off topic and ranted for a long time, but for us it was those 3 levers: more people, more often, spending more.
And just quickly, do you account the paid advertising component as a lot about getting more customers, spending more money?
As in, sorry, can you repeat that?
How much was paid advertising part of you starting to make profit?
Oh, really great question. A huge amount, because we never wanted to pay to acquire customers before because we always looked at it as a loss. So we actually didn't pay to acquire customers. Whereas once we flipped the perspective and those levers, we paid a lot more to acquire customers. But then what you find is that your fixed overheads start to come down too. So your profitability actually goes up with a certain amount of volume also. So yes, we didn't do it until we shifted our perspective, and then we invested heavily into it.
Yeah. Wow. Wealth of knowledge. Chantel, what are the most successful marketing tactics that you are seeing small hospitality operators use at the moment? And you can give yourself another intro if you want. Mine was very quick.
Sure. Well, thank you for having me, first of all. I do feel like a bit of a novice here with these panelists just because I do have my own small business myself. Just a bit of a background. I'm a journo, so usually I'm on that side of things, not answering questions. And also I run Adelaide Dining Magazine completely on my own. So my answers are going to be very much from a small business perspective / being in hospo / being in media / very much being a consumer of all things hospitality. So I guess what I've seen in terms of marketing trends is obviously social media is everywhere, and there's so much going on there with reels and stills and, you know, who you're going to get out and which influencers to come and eat your food and take pictures and spread the word. What I'm seeing though is there's this untapped demographic that people aren't quite getting into, and they're the ones with all the money that want to actually come out and eat. So we're talking about those generations that have retired. They may not necessarily be on Instagram, TikTok, all that sort of thing, but they want to eat and they want to go somewhere really nice, and they want to know by word of mouth or somehow if that place is good and relevant. Once they find a place, they will go back to it. So our generation, I'm not that young anymore, but there's a generation that will hop around and try the newest, the hottest fad, you know, this place, this is where you need to be right now. But there's another generation that will go find a spot and keep going back and then recommend it to all their friends. So I guess having said all that, marketing, yes, social media is huge to an extent. Adelaide, and talking about Adelaide and South Australia specifically, being born and bred here, it's all word of mouth. It's so important. Yes, there's Google reviews. With my magazine, we attract international and local audiences, and I find that the international audiences, yes, like we would go overseas and look up somewhere to eat. They're looking at Google reviews because they don't know any better. But your locals are going to other locals or something relatively similar on Instagram to find out where everyone's going. So it's about trying to appeal to a broader audience and not being so hemmed in by social media, because also there is quite a shift I'm starting to see away from social media. People are now missing having to pick up something and look at pictures and reading things, and, you know, the scrolling, it does your head in and you get a snippet sometimes and it looks good, but then you go there and it's not like what you just saw. It's a little bit false as well. So so I'm just seeing the marketing, really it's about getting your finger in every pot somehow and being able to appeal to the audiences that actually want to come back, not come spend $20 on a feed me or whatever and be like, that was good, next kind of thing. So yeah, I could go on forever.
No, thank you. Chloe, what are the most effective ways hospitality businesses can turn first-time customers into regulars? And where do you see venues getting customer retention wrong?
Yes, that was probably a pretty good segue. So look, I just a bit about me. Yeah, so we're fourth generation hospitality businesses. We've had pubs for 60 plus years, and have definitely gone through that evolution of hotels and have seen them, from even when I was little to now, and how they have evolved over time. And our venues are at all different levels, from the Sterling Hotel down to the Mansell Park, they're not the same, and you can't treat them the same. And I think that would go on to my next question. But yes, definitely turning those first-time customers into loyalty or loyal customers. And that is something that we're really working hard on within our business. You just can't look at a customer like a transaction. They're more than that. And it's really, understanding what we think are really three key parts are that customer engagement and that customer journey, as well as ensuring there's consistency within the business, as well as what is going to draw them back into your business. And so I think from the top, definitely ensuring that you know your customer before they even walk through the door. We're so lucky these days with the way our booking platforms, we can actually gain so much data from our customers before they even walk through the door. Are they there for a birthday? Are they there for an anniversary? And using that to your advantage when they get to the till, when they get to the meet and greet. So you know more about your customer than they think you know about them. And then it goes to when you're sitting down to the table, it's gaining that rapport, introducing yourself. It doesn't have to just be from the senior management. It's instilling that into your junior staff as well. And that's something that we're really working hard on at the moment. And then I think it comes down to that consistency within your venue. You can bring them in once and, if one thing might be off, they might query whether they're going to come back the second time. So it's just maintaining consistency, ensuring the food's good, the atmosphere's good, and that quality of service that they're receiving is also good. And then what can you do to draw them back? And again, that's like us. And, we battle with this from, like I was saying, the Sterling Hotel down to the Mansfield Park. You can't do the same across all venues. You can't follow the same trends because you really need to tap into what your customer wants and what they need. So, it's just making sure that for us, our menus are seasonal, so they don't get stale. And those customers can come back and have, know that they're still going to receive great food, but it's going to be different. And I think it's super important, as well as the events and the activations that we're running through the hotel. They're super important, I think, for us. And I think, sometimes I think when venues do get it wrong is that just some of those things aren't instilled into the venue. Again, you might go into a venue and you might have good food, but the service is off. So I think you do question whether, am I going to come back? And again, loyalty is not built in a night. It's built over time, and it's built in trusting your customer. And, as I said, we're still learning, and we're still learning ways to keep our customers in. We have now created, what many venues now have as well, which is a loyalty program. We didn't decide to do it off the bat, 5 years ago. It's taken us time to get where we are. And that's just now our new way of how to engage our customers and how to give back to them. To keep them coming back as well.
Because it worked.
It's worked surprisingly well. So, look, I'm not going to gloat, and I don't know what your member database is at, but we launched 4 months ago and we are sitting at 30,000 customers. And for that was huge. And that was when we knew we're doing something right.
Yeah. So what are you doing? Like, what is the loyalty program?
So like many loyalty programs, where ours is you spend $5, you get a point, or you get, and then you can redeem that for, a product within the venue. But as well as, we're doing activations that are exclusive to our members. So I don't want to give it too many secrets, but it is, we're really working with our suppliers as well. So, we want a little bit from them so then we can give that to our customers. It's not going to affect our bottom line. It's actually going to help it. It's going to work with our venues to better our GPs. So, it's just really reaching out to our key stakeholders that we're going to be using anyway to leverage with them so we can get better pricing, then we can give back to our customers. So, at the moment, our key focus has been alcohol and like beers, because that's been an easy push. But then we do activations for, like, let's say Members Mondays. So at some of our venues, you get a 20% off if you're a member. Another one's about a few other of our venues, you just get a 15% off of the menu any day of the week. It's eliminated seniors discounts, which has worked really well for us. And it means that, people can come in and just enjoy a benefit every day. So it's pretty much schnitzel night every night. So there's just few key things that we've been doing. But it's worked extremely well. And now it's just, how we're going to, we're not really going to see how has paid off. I think it's going to take at least a year. Everything takes about a year. But yeah.
Wow.
How do you actually sign on?
So that is also something we're working on really. We had a massive meeting about it today. But so key marketing for us has been at the moment just all kind of internal in venue. We've got our tap talkers, we've got our wobblers in the bottle shops, we've got our fusion signs, which are our digital displays. So that's been our key marketing at the moment. And that is through, obviously, the activations. You have to be a First Draft member to receive First Drafts, the loyalty app, by the way. Download now. I think good. There's a pool. You sign up, first-time members, they get $10 off their first, purchase, which is obviously a great pool. Everyone loves a little free something. And then, so that's how we've been marketing at the moment. It's all been either word of mouth or through those, just internal marketing collateral. However, we are now how are we going to market to people outside of the venue? So, it's something I think EDM marketing, it's simple marketing tool that we might look. We actually haven't really done any EDMs, which seems crazy, but that's going to be the next stage, and then maybe tapping into a few other database. Utilizing them. So yeah.
Wow.
My question.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
I'm also a customer. Sterling.
Thank you.
What I like about the first draft, so I had to change over. I was in your old.
Oh, yes.
Yes, I had to change over. The way they did that was just at the bottle shop counter.
Yes.
It expired and they said you can't get it. But then I did. But what I like about it is I also accumulate points at the cafe, the participants
Yes.
as well. And that's where my accumulation is probably just as
Yes. So and I think that was the biggest thing for us. We were like, how can we actually bring all of our venues into that? So we call it like our global platform. So, you can spend at one venue, redeem at another, and vice versa. So, and we're seeing actually surprisingly, we're seeing so much more cross-pollination than we actually thought that we would see. That truly, we had like customers, like I was saying, at the Sterling spending at the Albion, and it was great. It was awesome to see these transactions. They were all over our venues. So again, we were shocked, but very happily. Excited the success of it.
Do you see that loyalty programs working for small bars such as Bar Madrid? Would you see something like that working for us?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
100%.
Okay. Yeah.
I think one advantage you do have in Well, we've got a loyalty program. We don't have an app. One, I think that where small venue operators can get sucked in is trying to be big venue operators. The advantage you don't have when you're a big venue operator is that you need to, you're not really with the customers all the time. And I think the best thing you can do in a small venue is probably surprise and delight and recognise and know people by name, because training a staff, how many staff have you got?
Yeah.
Training a staff of 500 to recognise every regular's name is really, really difficult. So I think the small venue's competitive advantage isn't in great loyalty programs, but it's in building great loyalty through more surprise and delight, I would say. And it also allows you to value stack instead of discount. You can kind of retain your margins rather than lose them when I don't think it's necessary.
Thank you. Anna, with the changes happening around the Adelaide Central Market, the South Australian economy, the prospect of Michelin recognition for South Australia, what could this mean for our hospitality industry and particularly for small independent venues?
All right, so I'm going to break the mould because I'm not going to talk about marketing and I'm not going to talk about repeat customers, although I'm going to go a bit rogue because I do want to talk about the importance of things recurring. So when you look at things like recurring events in the state, and this government's been particularly good at that, and it gives surety to business, whether they're larger business or whether they're small business, to actually invest. Because when we have repeat events, particularly when they bring things like Gather Round and Live Golf, where they're bringing people in from interstate or globally, that is fresh money coming into the economy, but it's also an advertisement for everybody in the industry that money can't buy. So we're getting to showcase what we do. And we know that moving forward, increasingly, people are going to places because they're looking for an experience. And I think that probably speaks to the importance of the Michelin star stuff. So with that, food becomes the destination. And it doesn't just activate the particular venue that has the star or the stars attached to it. It activates that whole area because people go there initially because of that. And these are global tourists. These are people that are high spend. They go to that region, but once they've actually eaten at the particular restaurant or, wine bar or venue that they were going to, they then go and visit other small bars, venues, restaurants as well in the area. So, and the other thing about the Michelin star is it attracts talent.
Yeah.
Like, if you've got that, it makes people want to good people want to join the industry, and it shows industry. And this is a huge challenge that we've got at the moment. And I'm going to be preaching to the converted and the all-knowing. It is so hard to get staff. Now it's hard in every industry at the moment. It's particularly hard for hospitality. And I think it was bad. I'm going to say the C word, which is COVID. It was hard before COVID, right? But during that period, there was a big exodus out of industry because we were seen as being less reliable, most likely to be closed down, all of that. And people left and they went and worked somewhere that they knew wasn't going to be closed down. So I think anything that we can do to show that hospitality is actually a career path. People like Chloe are living, and her family are living proof of that. It's not the job that you have before you get a job, and it's not the job that you have while you've got another job or while you're studying. It's so much more than that. A little bit about me. I started my working life as a liquor licensing lawyer. And now I've ended up here, so it's kind of full circle. And I can tell you that where I've ended up is way more fun than being a liquor licensing lawyer. So yeah, look, the Michelin star thing is huge. It's a massive global advertisement for us that I don't know how you put a price on that. And the other thing about it is this industry is a broad church, right? So there are small businesses, there's medium businesses, there's larger pubs. And now I've lost my train of thought. Anyway, it'll come back to me. Until it does, I'll talk about Central Market.
Yep.
So Central Market also, and what's being done there also speaks to people looking for a destination and an experience. It's very different to when I was young. I don't want to age myself, but it was different then. When you thought about where you wanted to go to, you kind of looked at, okay, well, what can we afford? We're uni students or whatever, and it was done on that basis. I've got adult children now, and I look at them and how they make their decisions about where they go, and it's about the produce and how that produce is sourced and what is done with the produce, and there is so much more to it, and it's become about quality rather than just quantity and that kind of thing. And I think that the market is iconic. I would say it is a nation-leading market. It is a draw card for people to the city, which we desperately need, again, after COVID, because there hasn't been that foot traffic returned. So it activates that environment. And while people are in at the market, that encourages them to go to other smaller venues and sit and stay and have lunch or whatever. So that's really important. The other thing that's really important about it, and I'll move into, broad church, accommodation hotel space. The accommodation hotel that's being built there will bring people in and encourage them to stay. And that's a whole new market as well. And then that's all about dwell time and how long they're in the city at the market as well. So that whole precinct development is really important. So all of these things, I started off talking about the events, but then talked about, the accessibility of our regions as well. People can come here and we can be a destination state. And I really think hospitality now is becoming about going to a destination for an experience.
Can I just add to that as well? I feel like because I was going to mention as well, that experience, and not bringing it back to marketing, but anything to do with an experience and a collaboration seems to do wonders in terms of getting the names out there, because people want to see, yes, they've heard of this particular restaurant, but then they're collaborating with such and such winery. And that's saying that you aren't the be all and end all. Like, you're collaborating with other people, acknowledges that you want to bring in different wines or beers or something to promote them and share that sort of success together. So collaborations do an amazing job in the marketing scheme of things, and so do events. Just as a quick example, I work with Howard Vineyard, who have a beautiful rosé and always have been known for their rosé wine. And they, a few years ago, decided to do a rosé dumpling festival. That festival has kicked off, and every year it's bigger and bigger, and it's appealing to generations, not just, the young ones, not like everyone's going, and it's popular. And it's because they've tapped into, they know they produce a good product. They're not saying Shiraz and Sav and this, they're just saying rosé and dumpling. And dumplings, obviously, a dish a lot of people love, and it's worked. So those sort of events that make you unique and a point of difference definitely have a lot of success. Like you were saying about the events and becoming a destination to come to. So,
Thanks, Chantal. Okay, Ollie, you have been very vocal on social media about making yourself accessible to other venue owners. Why do you think that openness is important, and what more could the industry do to support small and independent operators?
Perfect, thank you. We've been vocal because we feel like, a rising tide will float all ships. And I think having building is a great example of an industry which is constantly collapsing. And back to your point on COVID is, if people are leaving and not getting their super paid because the business was ran badly, then they're likely going to exit the industry, or they're going to feel burnt by it. And I think it can reduce that kind of career mentality for staff a bit, kind of like the Michelin star. And I think you nailed it before. To me, I think the greatest thing of Michelin for the state is going to be the talent acquisition. I think even front of house, when you go and work behind a bar, the amount of people that ask you what you're studying and implying that you're only there to fill a gap is unlike sort of any other country in the world where hospitality can be a real career. And I think that a huge part of that is that we have standardized the wages in hospitality so much that you can no longer pyramid or tier salary brackets based off of quality, because everyone's on such a high base that a level 2 and a level 3 is $3 an hour different, and you just can't pay people what they're warranted for their experience because it's so dictated by levels. If you go and look in the award, and it's a couple of years ago, they added specifically chef titles which weren't previously there, like chef de partie, demi chef, commis chef, and they assigned it to titles which wasn't there. But you look at the difference between and anyone that has a restaurant that has a chef de partie versus a commis or a demi, the skill level can be massive, but the award tiers are so tight and close together that you get paid $2 or $3 grand more a year for a huge increase in responsibility. It's not overly fair. Anyway, I'm really going on a tangent again, but to me, I think that if people are running great businesses that are profitable and they can afford to pay people what they're worth, then the industry as a whole will be more sustainable. So that's why we put it out there. We think that if we can give people practical tips, then they'll be able to run better businesses. It also trains staff before they get to us.
Yeah.
So if someone has worked for someone else that might have followed tips and done things the way we wanted, then that learning curve from them to us is much smaller, and it just allows you to kind of get higher trained or higher quality staff as an industry. So I only see it as a positive.
Not just, yeah, something.
The stuff about people in industry working together. This industry is really unique, I think, in that respect. And maybe it's because the people that go into this industry are generally people and gregarious and that kind of thing. And it's bizarre, I'm talking about COVID again, but it was highlighted during that period. So I had just returned back into this industry prior to being in a completely different industry for a period of time doing a similar job. And I could not believe when COVID hit, and this industry was absolutely one of the industries that was hit the hardest and the hardest for the longest. There was kind of this half an hour of everyone being shell-shocked, and then this immediate activation and this positivity to work together and to go, okay, what are you doing? What are you doing? And this sharing. And, you know, in an environment where normally you'd have an industry and everybody's a competitor, there was this amazing underlying sharing of information and how to get through things together and what to do, like a huge camaraderie. I couldn't believe it. Whereas if I look back to where I'd come from, had I still been there, it wouldn't have been half an hour of, oh God, it would have been just sitting and worrying consistently over an extended period of time about what was happening and, okay, well, this is going to damage business. How can I get more business? Whereas this was a very, very, very different approach. So I think what you're doing is really reflective of industry and what the industry actually wants.
Thanks, Anna. Chantel, looking ahead, what food, dining and customer experience trends do you think small venue owners should be paying attention to?
And you've kind of nearly got there before.
Well, I'm going to answer this as both media and a consumer. I think one of the things that have been huge over the last few years is those feed me menus. And they're fabulous and they're amazing and they definitely suit a select audience, groups, functions, perfect. But I'm starting to hear more and more as I visit all these venues that customers are wanting that own special experience to themselves sometimes too. So I think it's great when you have that a la carte menu and all those different offerings, but you do have Feed Me as well. That's great. I think when it's entirely Feed Me and shared, if that's the philosophy goes behind that brand, that completely makes sense. But I definitely think there's a little bit more of a steer away from that share philosophy, which I feel like I'm like, that's like, because I know a lot of people do it. It's because people go out because they want something different that they can't get at home. And if you sit down to dinner at home, you're generally like dishing out shared meals and sharing amongst people. So they want something that's unique, something that's a point of difference. So I think I'm not saying to steer away completely from it, but if you can do something, someone's obviously started that Feed Me trend and it's taken off and it's done amazingly. And I think it's great in certain situations, but there is now a bit of a pullback as well because it's almost overdone. So I think that's one to just be in the back of minds. And the other thing is value, value for money, because more than ever, people are obviously looking to go out because they can, not because, and they want to actually enjoy an experience. You know, you might serve a big plate with a little dish on there and it may not fill them up and it may not taste that good, they're not going to come back because the value was not there. But you may do the same thing and the dish might be filling and taste amazing and have that quality we're talking about, because produce and sourcing is just so important in South Australia. It's like almost the be all and end all. People are so set on how and where did you get that from, which is great. But as long as you have that on the plate and it's value for money, you're going to succeed. It doesn't mean being the cheapest. In fact, that could probably work against you because you could be cheap and have this big, plate of gigantic chips in front of you. Yeah, it's going to fill you up, but are you going to go back for an experience? Probably not. So it's just thinking about value, because I think more than ever, that is the trend that's picking up now, and that's going to continue for quite some time, especially with the industry. People are tightening up their pockets. What are they going to cut back on? Probably eating out. So you need to find a point of difference. Why should they come visit you? What is different to other places? Do you have the value? Do you have other options? Are you collaborating? Have you got an event? That sort of thing. Something that makes people actually want to leave the coziness of their homes. And hearing from younger people these days, apparently the trend is most people are staying in. So there is a trend of, I've got people that have got, teenage kids and what have you. And I don't know, back in my day, we used to go out and have a drink and go to the pub and things like that. It's too expensive, so they won't go. So they would rather just buy all this wine and booze and sit at home and do their own thing and buy some Woolies snacks. But how can we get them out there again? How can we tell people that it's an experience? Dining out as a whole, it's not just eating, it's supposed to be an experience. Enjoy it. So really keeping an eye on consumer trends like that is important, I think, looking forward.
Thank you. Chloe, across a hospitality group with multiple venues and concepts, what do you think separates the venues that build strong, sustainable businesses from those that struggle to maintain momentum?
So yeah, I think with this one, again, having such a varied amount of hotels and seeing many years of these hotel developments, I think what we've really learned is, you don't just build a hotel, you just don't build a restaurant and let it sit still. We are always reinventing and evolving our venues. And something that worked 5 years ago, something that even worked a year ago is not going to work now. And I think that's something that we find really important with our venues. And so, whether it's, it doesn't have to be major renovations. We're talking about small bar upgrades or, just looking at the service offering, again, being seasonal with your menus, offering different activations, giving a customer something to return to that might be a little bit different than they've previously had. And then, a big thing for us at the moment is our gaming rooms, looking at our gaming rooms, reinventing our gaming rooms. What are our customers doing? What are they playing? How are they playing? And we've just noticed, and Anna can probably speak to this as well, but just the way they're playing now is completely different to the way that they were playing, a year ago, 2 years ago. It is crazy to see, some of these trends. And I think for us, really at the moment, it's honing in on our leadership team and working down from our leadership team, again, down to our juniors. And I think what we've really found is over the last couple of years, we have now got, it's basically a leadership forum. We bring in all of our venue manager heads into a group every month. We do a debrief. We give feedback to each other. We bring up the financials. We share everything that is the wins and the losses within the venues and how we as a group can, benefit from that. Seeing one venue do something really successfully, maybe we'll try that in another venue. And that has definitely taken us on a completely different trajectory than we ever thought was possible. And then we've taken now that leadership group down into this secondary tier of then bringing in other key staff from our venues. So even bringing in duty managers into these small forums and letting them share what they think. Because I feel like sometimes they're not heard and they feel like sometimes they're not heard, or it stays very much in venue and it doesn't get back to, sometimes our team within head office. So I think it's working and hearing from very much those key staff members and bringing that into the venue. And I think that's what's helped us really in the last few years drive huge success. And just, again, what works at one venue isn't always going to be work at another venue. And with these trends as well, you can't do everything. You can't, so you really are just tapping into what your customers want, what you need. It's gaining that feedback. I know we spoke about Google reviews very briefly, but that is something that's really big for us at the moment. Really tapping into those Google reviews, making sure they're being read, they're being heard. Are we actioning them? What are those key takes from them? And how can we better our venue from them? Ensuring those Google reviews are responded to. And that's more than, that's obviously engaging with the customer, but then it's also just bringing, your ratings up and, more brand awareness for your business. So, I think they're the key things that we're doing. And I think that's, I don't know if I've gone on tangents.
Sorry. Can I ask you, I use this word a bit to describe Adelaide sometimes, suburbist. So I feel like sometimes Adelaide people can be a bit suburbist. And what I mean by that is like, it's where'd you go to school and, where's your local coffee shop, all this stuff. Being an owner of so many venues that are all over the state, how do you get people to come out to somewhere that's further out that they would travel? Because there are certain, obviously we know like McGill Estate and Topiary and all these places that for some people are really far to get to, but somehow they will drive to go there because they know there's something good at the end of that drive. Have you experienced that? Like, I know that sometimes it's your local, but also like how to get those people to that location.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think, again, that's something that we're really building on at the moment. And I think it comes down to, a lot of the branding and the marketing of the venue and letting people kind of know that we do fall under the same group. And again, we've had a really huge shift in the last 2 years. We did rebrand our family group. We now are under the banner of Peermount, which has been great for us because I feel like now feels like there's some ownership. And then bringing people out to the venues, cross promotion, making people aware. It's that brand consistency. So when we really do pride ourselves on we're going to have nice napkins at the table and we're going to have nice menus, and the wine glasses, we're going to use nice wine glasses. And so whether that's driving them out to that venue, at least when they hear about the venue and they're like, okay, we'll give it a go. At least when they go out there is that sense of familiarity without it being the same. We're not going to carbon copy, but they're hopefully going to receive that same level of experience and, maybe see the menu and be like, oh yeah, that's nice. It's good quality, or, I've got a nice, linen napkin, not a paper napkin. I think it's just those small things that, we have been really working on. And
Brand consistency. Anna, looking ahead, what regulatory or policy changes do you believe would make the greatest practical difference in helping small hospitality venues survive and thrive?
Well, isn't it lucky we've got the minister here? Regulation and red tape is something that is a problem, has been a problem forever, has been spoken about forever. It's a problem for all business, no matter what industry you're in. However, this industry has an enormous amount. And and that's bad enough if you are a larger hotel or a larger hotel group. But if you are a larger hotel group, and this is not to diminish how hard it is for you guys as well, at least you have the capacity to perhaps have a staff member that you can dedicate to all of the raft of regulations and compliance that is in your face every day. If you are a small business, I'm guessing you don't have that. I know you don't have that. And it's not just a financial cost, it's a time cost. when you combine that with the fact that it's hard enough to get staff anyway, we have got people that are in small business and, better than me, and tell me if I'm wrong, but you are working an insane number of hours a week because you are out on the floor doing it. So anything that we can do, and that is why before we were even asked, we put in a submission to the Productivity Commission about this is what we think, and I'll be frank, this is what we think is the dumb stuff that people have to do. This is what we think is the stuff that is duplicated that people have to do. And this is not just at a state level. This is at a, when you have the collision between state and federal requirements. So there's often duplication. There's a whole, there's stuff that for food safety training that really and truly, and I won't go into it because it's in our submission, but, there is stuff that could be cut out that isn't going to be to the detriment of customers and patrons, because you guys don't want to do that. You don't want to deliver a poor experience for people coming in, but it would make such a difference for industry. So when you look at how much regulation and compliance there is, and you think it's just hard generally, that is amplified if you're a small business. And there is no nuancing. So whether you're little or medium, or whether you're a huge corporatised business in the hospitality industry, you get treated exactly the same. And I think that is something that needs to be looked at. I think there's a lot of low-hanging fruit that hopefully we can work through a process with government and try and identify some of those things to just knock them out and make an immediate change. And they're not things that require legislation. So they don't need to go through this slow-moving process. They are things that can be just changed because they're either their regulation or they're not even regulation, which brings me to local government. So, which I accept is, strictly speaking, not a level of government. It's kind of a creature of state government, I think. But it's, and again, look, all local governments areas were not created equally, right? So some are great. And look, can I say I have a history in local government? So, tell a story about myself. And they have a huge amount of work that they need to do and they have to do for their communities. But just a level of consistency across the different council areas, so that, if you've got, you would notice across, because you're scattered, that the requirements in some councils are quite different to the requirements in other councils. The fees that you have to pay, and I'm not talking about rates, but the actual fees that you have to pay to have particular audits done or whatever, are different. They set their own rates. The number of times that a council comes out to audit for particular things varies depending on where you live, right? And where your business is. So just some consistency across all of that would be huge. I think in terms of overarching policy settings, this state needs to do two things. I think it needs to put right at the forefront the fact that it is healthy for people to be going out and socialising. It is healthy, whether that be at a pub or whether that be at a small bar or whether that be at a restaurant. That is good. And in an age of, we're in the age of loneliness, at a time when we are more connected, supposedly, than ever, over 12% of people say they have no friends. They are lonely. For many people, we know that the only sense of belonging that some individuals have is when they go to the pub or their local bar or small venue. That's the connection that they have. That's the sense of belonging that they have. There are people that rarely have face-to-face contact anymore. Now, I agree. I think that's shifting. I think people are starting to move away and back into, I'm not going to say the old days, but a retro approach of actually just doing that warm catch-up, spend time with people. And I think we need to tap into that. And I think particularly our younger generations are looking for that as well. I think we can learn some lessons if we look beyond Australia and we look at somewhere like the UK, for example, and we see how that environment works with their small venues and restaurants and bars, and the fluidity that they have, in a stretch where people are able to move between them, and the flexibility that they have in their outdoor areas. And the regulation is less, but in a way it almost makes the interaction safer. I think that's I'm trying not to look too close at it, but I think that's something that we probably need to consider. The other thing is, I can tell you that we work closely. We run a program called Small Business Fundamentals, and that's something that's been funded by government, and that's gone for about 3 years or something now, and it has been a massive success. And I think it points to the need that there is out there. So the leadership and the management training we have become like the Taylor Swift of leadership training. We put up these sessions and they are selling out within 40 minutes. And then we're like Ticketek, because then we have like an early bird list for the ones that didn't get in, and we do a pre-sale thing, which is not really a pre-sale because we don't charge for it because we have funding for it. But there is stuff out there, I think, is my point, for all of you to access. And I think the challenge is and a challenge for government, I think, is how is that put into, well, I'm not going to use the word portal because I think people are probably sick to death of portals, but how is that readily accessible, but also that you know about it, how much help there is actually out there for you all. That's probably.
Can we also reframe red tape to maybe risk? Because business is about reward and risk, right? Risk and reward. But at the end of the day, small business, for a lot of small businesses, there isn't necessarily enough in this industry, hospitality industry, enough reward for the risk.
Yeah.
Because it's such big and it's upfront. Then if you add to that the additional piece of compliance risk, it actually kind of ultimately turns around and goes, it's not worth it. So if we actually want to have a history and an ongoing culture and development of hospitality in South Australia, which is fundamental to this state, you have to turn around and go reward versus risk to begin with. It's not great for this industry. Throw in compliance risk, and it just basically erodes any potential reward for a lot of people. And it shouldn't be called red tape. It should be called risk, because time is money. And at the end of the day, if it takes too long to get something across the board, it can be bust as well for a lot of people. So, I see it as risk, and I see it as a two-pronged negative approach to small businesses,
And I think that's where we need to consider some nuancing for, there's a big difference in risk between running an establishment like this and running a nightclub. They're totally different. Now, that's reflected in insurance premiums and things like that.
That's coming from a liquor licensing.
And in licensing fees.
Yeah, exactly the same.
But it's not, and possibly fairly so, right? But it's very different when you're talking about the day-to-day compliance, of which there is it's hard to even know all of the things that you need to comply with. There is a very big difference when you're talking about that kind of thing. And I think there needs to be a tiered approach depending on what you do and what size you are, as to the thresholds that you need to meet.
And the long-term impact it has on the industry. because we need new people coming in, keeping this industry fresh, keeping the industry on its toes. We want new people. This is why we're all here. We want more people in this industry breathing fresh air into it. But the harder it gets, the less it will happen.
And the funny thing is, to that point, often when I'm with a group of people or I'm talking at something or whatever, people will say, well, you're going around the room and you're doing the introduction. And people will always go, oh, I worked in hospo for a period of time. It was the best time of my life. It was the best industry ever to work in. And I'm like, so why are you doing what you're doing now?
Yeah.
Why didn't you stay? You know, we need to actually tap into that. Yeah.
Thank you, Anna. That's the end of the panel discussion. So thank you very much to our panellists. And I suspect we have some questions or things that people want to talk about. So I was going to open and ask the question to my husband and business partner. And it is quite topical. So David, from your experience running Bar Madrid day to day, what has tested the business's resilience most, and what changes have helped you come through it? And feel free to ask people questions.
Yeah, sure.
So I think we touched most of the topics that affect us. And I'm pretty in line with you, I want to say probably one of the challenge more difficult I found is the staff. The staff, I think after COVID, there was a maximum exodus of the industry. They never come back, most of them. A few years, but and most of them, they come back was in the kitchen, not even in the front house. And right now, you are saying with Michelin, it's going to bring a lot of new blood to Adelaide, but I'm scared of the opposite. I'm scared. So they're going to bring probably a lot of chefs, a lot of people they wanted their star, and they're going to come in here and a few high-end front house, but the front house is tricky because right now in Adelaide, I think it's one of the things we are more in deficit. And yeah, it's difficult because, like you say, it's like there are not a clear path of like a career. And here, most of the people they saw it like, oh, I work like when I study something else just to make some money in that time, and later when I finish my studies, I go into my industry I study for. And yeah, it's like it's all the time. It's training and lose really great people, but training. It's kind of like tiring. But yeah, I don't know if someone wanted to apport to this matter. Maybe we talk too much about it, but.
Does anybody want to respond? Or yeah.
Um,
And do you want to introduce yourself?
Sorry, I'm Themis Cressida's business partner with Callum for Sprout Food Group. I think it kind of talks to Ollie's point about staff retention. We want to be able to fairly reward our staff, and that's not just with the sense of a great place to work and excellent people to work with and other perks for working within your organisation, but at the end of the day, remuneration is key as well. And listening to what Ollie said before about ultimately how the levels of the award are so close together, I've had to have, it just reminded me of an awkward conversation I had with a staff member where I honestly, this person was, in their 50s, an excellent contributor to one of our businesses, valued staff member, and they just looked me in the eye and they said, after all the experience I've got, after everything I've done, and they've been paid really well, they just kind of said, I need more and I deserve more. And I looked him in the eye and I said, fair point, you do deserve more. But the reality is most of our wage budget goes to unskilled, uncommitted individuals that we're being told we have to pay this much money to. And I'm sorry, but they get paid more, so you get paid less. And that was the reality. And he ended up moving to the mines. Now, if we're talking about staff retention, the system is fighting against that at the end of the day, because you're getting unskilled people that don't want to rock up. They'll cancel 2 hours before a shift or whatever it is. And we're actually pretty good, to be perfectly frank. I'm kind of speaking from an industry perspective, but You're getting individuals that aren't committed. They just want to work those, get the money to go out or do whatever they need to do. But you've got great staff who, from a Michelin perspective, you want to retain these people, and we're talking about a career in hospitality. They aren't able to get rewarded because majority of the enormous wage budget is actually attributed to unskilled, unreliable staff. And that is beyond our control. And I'm not saying they shouldn't be paid fairly, because shit, it's tough out there, right? And you got to get paid fairly. But most of the budget goes towards those individuals, and it doesn't actually go to the most important people in your team. And that's the reality.
And we don't tip here in Australia either, so there's no incentive
Exactly.
anywhere.
Yeah, and we lost that staff member and had an honest conversation with him, and both shook our hands and we said, yeah, it's broken.
Does anybody have a response to that? Introduce yourself.
My name's Andrew Kay. I'm the CEO of the South Australian Business Chamber. But I was being severely triggered when Ollie was talking before, because I was the CEO at Wirra Wirra for 15 years, and we started a restaurant called Harry's Deli, which is about to celebrate 10 years. And I still remember taking that first Christmas off, as did the head chef. I'm looking at the app on my phone thinking, I'm not going to be able to get through the front door when I come back for all the cash that is blocking me from getting in, because it was killing it. And we lost money. And that's when I learned about portion control and how it's important to have your head chef there during those busy times. Just on wages, I think, I don't actually, this is not a positive thing, so I'm sorry, we haven't actually seen it yet. But when we really start to kick in with Walkers and building Osborne, et cetera, that experience of losing people from hospo who can get paid 120k a year to be labourers, it's real and it's coming at us. So we need to be prepared for that, because it's definitely going to be more of an issue. And something you were saying, sorry, that panel, thanks so much for putting this on. I'm often on panels and I often watch panels, and most of the time I feel like leaving the room as soon as they finish, because it's like, whatever. Tonight, I wanted to jump in and comment. I was inspired by what everyone was saying, because it was so accurate and so genuine. And I'm really pleased that you're filming it so that people who are doing service can get to see it. But we often hear in the media about businesses that are falling over, and the media love to go straight to hospitality because it's really easy and people can recognise that cafe down the street that's folded. And often it's for no other reason. There's been an issue with the landlord or whatever. But I do see more and more when I talk to business owners that the kids don't want to take over from mum and dad. So if there's a succession issue, it's not happening because they're seeing how hard it is to run a small business. And like Anna, we advocate a lot. We've been banging the red tape or the risk drum for a long time, and it hopefully contributed to the productivity thing that's happening. We're both on a panel at Tower 1 in a few weeks, where the Productivity Commission are going to launch the investigation into red tape, and they want businesses in the room. They want to hear from businesses. So I encourage you to find a way, if you can, to get there and give them some really direct feedback, because I know that'll be welcome. But thank you for the opportunity to be here.
I have a question, Andrew. What do you think the answer to people leaving to AUKUS and retaining staff in hospitality is?
That's a great question. I think like anything, like any business, it's about building a culture that makes it really attractive in the present to be there, but also a belief that there's something that you're moving towards, that there's a tier. And I know it's really difficult. We could have said a decade ago, it's not always about money, but right now it is about money, because cost of living pressures are hard and people aren't earning enough necessarily to get themselves a foot on the ladder. I mean, I have staff at the chamber who I lose to government because they pay them more than we pay them. But it's staff regularly coming up and saying, hey, I need a pay rise. And why is that? Well, because I want to buy a house and I'm getting married and my kids moving to a new school. And I'm like, I didn't realise I had the word bank tattooed across my forehead, but let's have that conversation. It is about money right now, so I can't give you an easy answer, but I always think it comes back to building a culture and a reason to believe. And the best brands, the best businesses always do that. I was a marketer before I was a CEO, so I don't come from a finance or a legal background. I always think about the brand and what that means, which was fascinating hearing you talk, Chantel.
I've got actually a bit of a point on that one. So again, this is something that we have been working on. I'd love to obviously hear from Cal and Themis and obviously yourself, Ollie, as well, having multiple venues. But, talk about the staff retention and showing that career progression is something that we are also working with the AHA on as well, because we're creating, it's a bit corny, but it's our Peermount University within our group. And it's actually inviting those young juniors and staff members into this university to help them progress into this career. And they are accessing these sources from the AHA and these courses that they're offering to help us show that there is a career within hospitality. And, it doesn't have to just be a venue manager. There's marketing, there's finance, there's so many tiers that I think a lot of these, young individuals don't see. And I think, is there anything that you guys are also doing to kind of assist you guys in, do you guys do any leadership programs or within your group? Yeah.
Yeah, we do a fair few leadership programs. I think it's always a tough one. I think group size makes a big difference. Like if you have a group size and you can afford a head office, then fantastic. And you'll find a lot of people want to get out of service, which is really hard in hospitality. They want to get paid more and do no service, which is a tough one to make stack financially. But yeah, we do have a lot of different roles and we do try and create a career progression. We make it very clear. We do simple things like every role's advertised internally and externally, just to make sure we're constantly visible with people that there are roles coming up. And we always ask people where they see themselves in performance reviews. So we've tried an LMS style, learning management system to progress people up more, I guess, in a linear training education fashion. We found it really hard to get people to engage. So we put in more effort into building the system than to putting people through it. So we kind of broke it down to what we thought was much more simple, attainable steps, like a question in performance review. Strangely, we changed our interview process. So we changed the questions in our interview process to kind of plant the seeds of where we want it to go on the career progression and the expectation. We found that more valuable than a tier for a level 2 cocktail bartender is this kind of culture of progression. But I find it really, really hard in small venues. Yeah. I think in small venues you end up, it's I was in wine prior to hospitality, and I remember the best way to get a career in wine was to go work for a huge winery so you can become a head winemaker somewhere around the world when positions open up, and the worst spot to go in was to go to a small producer in the hills, because the head winemaker's never leaving. So you're going to sit there under the head winemaker forever, and you're going to have this amazing passion, but at the end of the day, you can grow culture on a piece of bread, but if the piece of bread isn't there, there's going to be no culture left. And you can't pay people, and there's no progression, then there's nowhere for them to go. So I think hospitality groups have a huge advantage in creating career progression, but I think from a small operator, you do have some other challenges.
I'm just going to pass last question to Niraj. A new venue, 6 months. And I saw your hand up, so I'm going to pass the microphone.
Actually, guys, done a wonderful question, already done. The question I have, it's involved everyone. For example, creating a right culture, right experience for the people, and a right, a staff retention. So, for example, these all things can become with the right people, right mindset, and right passion. And recently, I think education plays a very important role in that. And recently, from last 1 year, 3 universities has been closed their hospitality program in Adelaide, like the Kaplan University, Torrance University, and one of the major universities, Liquid and Blue. So they closed their program. So right nowadays, it's very hard to find the right people with the right mindset, who's really looking their career pathway. So that's a question I have. So just bring it.
So the question is about trying to find the right staff.
Yeah, and what's the future is looking like, for the hospitality in SA, because the universities are closing their programs. So what's the government is going to?
Does anybody want to answer this? Anna does.
Okay, so it's an industry that has a great mix of skilled, semi-skilled, and skilled labour. I'm a huge fan of training, and I'm a huge fan of mentoring as well. I think if you look at the training structure, and it's this age-old debate between university and other tertiary education, which is the vocational educational system, so TAFE or whatever. And I don't think we have ever really dealt with that stigma that attaches to vet is the poor cousin of university, because that is absolutely not correct. And I say that as somebody that went to university, and I can tell you that most of the courses at university don't have a direct pathway into a career, whereas if you enter the vet system, they do. But I think we need to have a look at what the barriers are. If it's so good, what are the barriers? And I honestly, I think that begins in schools. I think that begins with the careers counsellors. And I think it doesn't necessarily, I'm sure, it doesn't just sit with the kids. It sits with the parents of the kids that are carting the kids at career expos straight past things that are more like trades or hospitality and taking them to the university students and that kind of thing, or the police force or the defence forces and stuff, which are all really important. But I think we tend to get lost in that process. I think we need to have a look at, if it's going to take you 4 years to get a Cert 4 in something, people are going to go, well, I might just go and be a dentist then, because that'll take me 5 years. Kids want to get results quickly. They're going to drop out. There needs to be a way, and we're currently going through a process where we're piloting an accelerated apprenticeship program. And that's
From school age or?
Yes, can be from school age. So that's about to kick off, and that's dramatically shortening commercial cookery. And the basis for that, and that leads me into how do you bring prestige in? And I think if you can shorten the course so that you have core modules that you need to deliver, but you know this, not everybody's dragging a carcass out the back and chopping it up, right? So we don't necessarily need to have electives such as butchery or patisserie for everybody, but they need to be available. And where they are available, you then become a specialist in those areas, and it starts to give this prestige to the industry, because, you can have the base level qualifications, but you can have these additional things as well. And I think that also speaks to the career pathway that is there. The retention rates for people that go into training are awful. I would have said another word, but I've just remembered it was being filmed. So they are woeful. They are 32% or something. So you can have a funnel that's like this big, but if that's how big it is at the bottom and there's, hardly anyone coming out the other end, it is just a massive waste of money and disruption.
Do you think free TAFE has taken the incentive away? If it's not costing people money, they kind of enrol and maybe making that funnel bigger, but maybe not having people dedicated to see it through?
I think a far greater driver of the lack of retention is that, and I'll say kids, but it's not always kids. Kids often give up for reasons that are completely unrelated to the actual training and what they want to do with their lives. It's to do with what else is going on in their life. They've busted up with their girlfriend or their boyfriend. Mum and dad have split up. things are tough at home. Some don't have anywhere to live. They're couch surfing. And that is enough to stop them. Sometimes they're even smaller things. But unless they have somebody to speak to, and this speaks to the mentoring side of things, we know that we have great group training organisations that actually, you know, have that pastoral care for people going through their apprenticeships. They have far greater retention rates than if you don't. So I think it's to do with the length of the training, and I think it's to do with that mentoring, and I think it's to do with how do we speak to parents about the value of this industry and industries like it, and how do we raise the prestige and make it clear that there is a career pathway.
It's a question for you, Anna. When Australia needs more soldiers, the government runs ads to join the army. When we need more cops, we run join the police force campaign. At a state level, the campaign to encourage people to join the hospitality sector, to create pride in the sector, if it was co-contribution, maybe, sorry to use the word, levy on the sector, but also matched by government, would that get up? Is there value in it?
There's always value in doing like co-funded things, and it's stuff that we often put up, and there is stuff that we have put up historically, some of which has been successful and some of which hasn't. You raise an interesting other point though. So when we talk about medical, like emergency services and medical practitioners and nurses and police and that kind of thing, and the state government runs a recruitment program because there's going to be a shortage and that's what we need. And it's easy to see the obvious need. What's the obvious need for medical practitioners and stuff? Well, you know, it's health and it's ramping and it's all of that kind of stuff. What's the obvious need for police? Like, it's easy to see with emergency services. It's not so easy to see with hospitality, because you just kind of go, well, that's just a fun thing, right? Mm. Why would the state government want to promote that? How is that in their best interests? I'll tell you how it's in their best interests. The state government at the moment, remember all of the events that I talked about and all of the new people that we're trying to have come here, the great advertisement that it is, the fresh money coming into our economy, not the stuff just being recirculated. What's going to happen when people come here and they don't get great service because we don't have enough staff? And that's why it should be important.
Can I add to that my question? You spoke about Osborne, right? Potentially stealing staff out of an already tight industry. You just raised a really great point about quality RTOs changing their or cancelling their qualifications. The other question we should be asking is, why aren't these RTOs cancelling their qualifications? And that relates to potential foresight of pending legislation changes coming around immigrants, right? Because most of those RTOs profit out of offshore money, right? So that's a fundamental change there. And then you also talk about free TAFE. Well, free TAFE makes it anti-competitive with the rest of those RTOs that can't train people that actually we need for our industry. And then you also then turn around and go, if we're going to change immigration rates, hands up in this room if you employ someone from another country. You don't even bother to put your hand up.
Thank you for saying all of that, because they're all things that I may well have thought of, but it's not sure whether I was going to say them, but I don't think you're wrong about any of them.
You know, 1 to 3, 4 years.
Yeah. Demis, are you guys an RTO? You were?
We are an RTO.
Do you train anyone?
We train some people, yeah. Absolutely.
Why?
We used it as an opportunity for us to hopefully train some of our own staff, our own future staff as well as, much like you, mate, to give back to the industry, because we believe that being in the industry, it gives us a great opportunity to train people with relevant skills that are going to impact the industry immediately. So, but it was a two-pronged approach, but it's incredibly challenging, and I speak to RTOs all the time that are closing because they don't have the opportunity for offshore, and that's the ones that pay the bills. So you're going to have a massive issue in a couple of years.
Thank you, Dennis. It's coming to 8 o'clock, so I'm going to close the discussion, but I wanted to thank everyone for their contribution tonight. It's really nice to see how passionate people are about our industry. So I encourage you to stay and have another drink and talk casually. We'll keep the lights on till 8:30. We've got kids to go home to. And in particular, thank you to our panellists and thank you to the Minister for being here.